What's up, guys? Welcome back. I am here today with Megan Walker, who is the Rising Forms Pro official voice. I don't see anybody else doing Forms Pro except you. And so that is also why you're here today. Is that correct?
I just thought you wanted to chat and you liked me, but yeah, okay, we'll go with that.
Definitely chat, and I do like you, but I definitely want everybody to get introduced, because even for myself, I haven't touched it. I haven't experienced it yet. I'm still using Forms in Office, and so this is very exciting. So Megan, I am going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself to everybody, and let you go ahead and jump in and take it away.
Perfect. Okay, so let me go ahead and we will share my screen. And you should hopefully be able to see. Perfect. Okay, so as John said, I've been doing a lot of stuff about Forms Pro. And to me, one of the things that I've been, I think, the most excited about, happiest about with it is I knew a little bit of flow. I'd done a few flows here or there, done some flows for like the portals, things of that nature. But I didn't realize when I delved into this how much this has related to Microsoft Flow. So that's what I'm really excited about. So we'll be going through some really cool flows that hopefully help people bring it all together in their minds in terms of what they could really do with Forms Pro. It's not just about filling out a form. So all right, so I wanted to just cover a little bit in terms of what is Microsoft Forms Pro. So it's an online survey creator in the basic, simplest of senses. So originally it was Office Forms. And then in about June 2016, I think it is, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think
you're right. Yep.
Did a little bit of research. So Forms, which is what most people will have known if they've used this, then that's going to be what they're familiar with. So that was released in June 2016. And I think a lot of users were educators. So there were people that were using it to create surveys and quizzes. So for your students, being able to set up a quiz and then be able to grade them on the quiz. So I know that it was used by a lot of educators, or still is. So universities, schools, that kind of thing. Yeah. So March of this year was when Forms Pro was released or into public preview. From my perspective, I was a big advocate for voice of the customer. I still really like it. Kind of a little sad, but it's okay. We have to move. We have to change. But I'd done videos on voice of the customer, and I'd also working on a project where we'd said, you're going to be using voice of the customer, and then
so real quick, what is voice of the customer for those that don't know?
Yes, absolutely. I forget we're not just in a CRM world. So voice of the customer, if anybody has used Microsoft Dynamics customer engagement, which, sorry, I'm going to just say CRM because it's a lot easier and faster to abbreviate throughout, but that's what I'm referring to. So that is a built-in survey tool where you can basically set up your questions. You can say when a case is closed, let's send an email to someone and ask them to fill out a survey, that kind of thing. So, but that could only be used within CRM. That's what the tool was for. So when I heard Forms Pro to come out, and there was nothing official at that time, but it was kind of, you put two and two together, and I think, ooh, what's going to happen with this? So let me look at Forms Pro. And you're right, no one was doing anything when I first started, and I was like, oh, hang on a second. These sorts of these sorts of things don't come along often, to where they present themselves as a gap, because usually it's saturated with, there's so many people doing things on one subject. So I kind of delved into it because of that. So to me, one of the really, really cool things with Forms Pro is, and you're right, I've mentioned voice of the customer just, trips off the tongue because that's my world, but I forget that there is such a big world out there in terms of Microsoft products. So this to me is such a cool thing that it's got a built-in integration with Office 365 and with Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform in terms of the records. When someone fills out a survey, they're going into the common data service, which you can then take that information and then add it into your model driven app and say, oh, now I can say when this survey comes in, let's do this. Or when this case closes in Dynamics, let's do this with a survey, and let's use Flow to tie it all together.
I'm glad you mentioned CDS, because I think, that's the big part of this. If you think of CDS enables not only, you mentioned one thing, model-driven apps, but also business process flows, right? And so if you don't want to use those standard forms now, you can use the experience you're going to see here to now feed data into the common data service, where then it can be consumed by your business process flows and model-driven processes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for me, when people say, well, what's the big difference, or why should I care about Forms Pro over Forms? Like, what's it going to give me? That to me is the number one thing that it's going to give you as an organization. So for sure. So it was just made generally available, GA, just
recently.
So July 1st, which is really cool.
Nice. Congrats, Forms Pro team.
Yeah, and they are a fantastic bunch of people. So yeah, they've been great. I've just sent them email after email after email. Hey, should it do this? Can it do that? So yeah,
that's great. They need that.
Yeah. So what I wanted to just point out is so obviously anybody well, I think a lot of people who are going to be watching your videos and follow you, John, then obviously it's because they're interested in Flow. So they should be familiar with, we've got the connectors. So I wanted to just kind of, before we delve into the flows that I'm going to walk through, is just to have a little bit of an understanding of what the connectors have. And I'm going to talk about the Forms Pro one and then also the Forms one, because that is significant. We do still need to pay attention to the quote unquote regular Forms one. Okay. So for the Forms Pro connector, we've got two actions, and currently there are no triggers at the minute. So we've got an action that creates an invitation and one that sends a survey. So the difference between these is creating an invitation is essentially giving me a unique URL link to a survey that's been created just for me as a contact, as somebody that I want to send out this survey to, or just for me as a lead, or whatever it might be. So I can basically generate a link, then put it into an email and send it out to somebody, so that then when they click on it, there's a bit of personalization going on within that survey. So we'll look at that as one of the examples as to why that's really cool. And it also means that I can then put that link within an email that I can send out from Gmail, Outlook, whatever it is. If there's a connector, I can do that with. The send a survey is a little bit different, because send a survey is using the email functionality from within Forms Pro itself. So I don't have the ability to change the email address that it's coming from, and I've got a little bit of a constraint in terms of that. But it is beneficial to be able to use that method as well. So we'll show that one too. Cool. Okay. Now I mentioned that the Forms connector, so we'll call it classic or traditional Forms connector. This is still important at the moment, whether I don't know whether there's plans for this to change, but there is an action that has existed for a while, and that is the action to retrieve the responses from the form. Yep. And that one you will still need to use, but you might be using it alongside the Forms Pro connector as well. Awesome. There's a trigger for Forms, which is when a survey response is received. However, guess what? Ours will be CDS when the new record is created. So that's why we wouldn't use that trigger, or at least I would be just suggesting not to use that trigger. Yep.
And so then if you want to trigger on this, you can use the CDS when a new record is created trigger. Is that true?
You could, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It just for me, my triggers would be I can use it and say when a new survey response comes into CDS. Yep. So to me, I think that might give you a bit more flexibility. But
got it. Okay, cool. Okay.
All right, so the flows we're going to look at, flow 1 is going to be something that I think a lot of people will be interested in, and that is sending a survey on case closure. Yes. So you're running a support desk, you're closing a ticket. I want to know how we did as an organization. I want to know how that specific service rep did, and how well they helped you, how polite they were, how professional, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So
That's a huge one. I get that request all the time. On every forms video I've ever made, there's 10 people that ask me for that thing. So this is going to be huge.
Yeah, so that's a cool one. So the next one you might think, oh, well, it's the same thing when a case is closed. This one is what I was talking about in terms of creating a link that then we can put in as an invitation link within an email to where I can have my email come from support@meganvwalker.com rather than the Microsoft Forms Pro email address that you can't change when you do the send survey option.
Got it.
And it's just done slightly differently. And then the last one is going to be something a little bit different to where we're going to look at how to embed a survey onto a web page, but then how to take what somebody's filled out. So this would be somebody that's essentially anonymous and be able to use one form but embed it into multiple pages. So if you think about, you've got a website with a lot of products or services, you could put your form somewhere on each of those different pages, someone fills it out, and it's a way to then take a parameter from that page to say this was the page that they were on and feed that back through to create a lead and use the page they were on as the lead topic, that sort of thing.
Nice. Okay,
so
great.
A little bit different.
Fancy.
All right, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
All right. Okay. So let me 2 seconds because I think I just shared my presentation. So let me actually share the entire screen.
Okay. No problem.
Which would make more sense. Otherwise, you won't be able to see. Okay. Still seeing?
Still seeing.
Perfect. All right. So what we're going to do is
you can minimize me too out of that corner there. I don't have to be there.
I don't want to see your face anymore. You're gone.
I know. I didn't want to see my face either.
Yeah, you're gone. All right. So, so what we're going to do is I'm not going to. This is not going to be a Forms Pro demo because the star of this is really the flows that are helping us use Forms Pro to the best of our ability. But I will be showing you a few things here or there that hopefully will be of interest.
Well, and to be quite honest, making a new form is pretty straightforward.
It's really easy, and not to pimp my own YouTube channel, but I've got about 20 odd videos already out there.
I was just gonna do it for you. Go to Megan's channel. She has tons of videos about making forms themselves. So if you want to see that, go there first and then come back.
Yeah. All right, so the first one we're going to look at is we've got a case closure feedback. Obviously, I've just put in the numbers after that on the subject, so just so that I could remember which one was which.
Yep.
So we've got a pretty basic survey here. It's basically how happy were you with the case that was resolved, rate the support rep, would you recommend us? We've got a net promoter score.
NPS, yeah.
Yes. So actually, there's another flow that I've done that is to update the Net Promoter Score for your entire organization. So that was one I was thinking about showing, but that's on YouTube, so you can catch that if you want to. All right. So if I go to send the survey, what I'm going to show you first of all is the mechanism that's built in to where we can actually use a template. Okay. So if I go to send survey, we can see here we've got a few options. We've got email, we've got Microsoft Flow, embed, link, and QR code. So I'm going to go to click on the Microsoft Flow one, and we're going to configure the flow. Now, the first step, you might think, oh, well, hang on a second, it's trying to get me to send an email. The first step is actually saying, all right, well, what email template do you want to use for the flow that we're about to configure? Whoa. Okay. So I've got a default template. You can see it looks a bit crap, really, doesn't it?
Plain.
Yeah, a bit plain. But if I pick, this one looks a little bit nicer. So actually that one, no, we'll go with that one instead. There we go. Nice. So I've got an image on there. I've got a header. I've used a different type of font. Thank you for being a valued customer, blah, blah, blah. So I've got a little bit of information. Now, what I can also, you can see right here, what we've got is hi, and we've got first name, and we've been able to personalize that by pulling in the first name. Okay. That's fine. That's great. That's all we'll go with for now. I'm just going to go ahead and click configure flow.
I have to say, this is already just so much better than the other forms experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, it's a really slick integration. So I'm just gonna maybe like, can we blur out this one right
Nah,
here?
that's
I
fine.
don't
You
like
know
it.
what? We're a platform. We love everybody, Megan.
Yeah, well, that's great.
We,
Okay,
yeah.
so let's highlight this. Put a border around it. All right. So the one we're going to focus on out of these 5 templates is this one. We're going to do send a survey when a case is resolved in Dynamics 365. So I'm
Right.
just going to go ahead and we'll click on that, and then it's showing us, well, what are the connectors that are going to be used. So we can see there we're going to use Common Data Service, and then we've got the Microsoft Forms Pro one. So I'm going to, let's see, it's change, and then
This is
perfect.
beautiful.
Now, some might say, oh, that's great, I'm happy. That I'm not happy with that. Like that,
No,
just
no.
because it says congratulations, I'm like, no. I want to see it, right? I want
Yeah.
to get to it. So
Yeah.
if I go back to send survey, well, hang on a second. There we go. So if I go back here, what we'll see, and that was 0 before if you didn't see it, but
I
that
saw
now
that. Yeah.
one flow configured. So I'm going to go into that, and we'll see there it's set this up, and it says, oh, this is the template that you've used for that message.
Okay.
And I'm just going to go ahead and we'll go into it, and it will take me into flow. So let's go ahead and edit it and see what it has done out of the box with that template. So this is actually, yeah, this was the first way that I started looking and figuring out, well, what more could I do with this, is by looking at the template. So for the first time you do it, it's a really good opportunity, especially if you're not that comfortable with flow. Like I said, I'd done things with flow before, but to me, it's always helpful to see how somebody else has structured something, to be able to then build from that.
That is one of my major teaching tenets in every beginner talk that I give. I say, break the templates, take them apart, do surgery, right? Like, look at,
Yes,
if you don't know how something's made, if it's already made, just go look at how it's made.
exactly.
That's how I learned, and so that's, I love that you say that, because I tell people that all the time.
Yeah, and I think if it hadn't been there, it would have taken me a lot longer to get to the point that I have in order to be able to showcase different types of flows, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
So first one. So this was what I was talking about. Although there is a trigger for Microsoft Forms that says um, uh, you've got the when a response is received,
Yep.
we now can do so much more, because what we're saying is when a record is updated, when a case is updated in your CDS environment. So for those that are using CRM, essentially the case from CRM.
Yep.
So what I am going to do next, so I've got my information, I've got the entity of being a case. Now what I need to do is the status reason for resolved is the value is 5. So we're basically saying check if the case is resolved. If no, obviously we don't want to do anything. So it's
So
stopped on that
5
side.
equals resolved.
Yes.
Okay.
And that should be the case for everyone's environment, because those are standard status reasons. So that should be the case. Okay. Then what we're doing is saying, well, yes, if that is true, so the status reason is 5, therefore it has been resolved. This is the part where for some people, and again, this is why I'm saying you need to look at it and you need to figure out what's right for your organization. Having been a consultant, I know that not even though the customer field can be an account or it can be a contact, some people will only ever have the customer be a contact, in which case you would not need the left hand side. In this one, they've set it up to where it's going to check both. There's no harm, but to me, just for a cleaner flow, if you don't use the account record in your customer field ever, then remove it and basically take that step out, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I'm going to go down the no side, because there's only 2 options for a customer. It's either an account. So if it's equal to account, it's yes. If it's not, it can only be a contact.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm going to go down the right hand side, and I'm going to say get the contact that's basically pulled from the case. And then what we're going to do is we just created a template, but this is using the send a survey option. And this is basically saying, okay, well, who's the survey going to? And that's the email that has come from the get record step above, basically who the customer is, so the contact email address.
Yep.
Then what we need to do is we need to pick the survey. Okay. Now, this is one thing that I hope will change, because from a usability standpoint, I have essentially 3 different environments for my for Forms Pro. I've got the default, I've got my sandbox, and I've got prod, and I'm seeing all of them in here right now. So just one so just one thing. So I have just had a video that has gone out where it basically talks about how to move things from sandbox into prod and actually do your deployment in a logical way. So I've put some tips and hints in about that. The survey is the one that we just picked in that first step when we selected the survey and then generated the flow. The email template is the one that we picked. That's perfect. Now what we've got is it's saying, okay, well, I'm sending this out, so I'm sending it to somebody, so it's going to create this survey invite within CDS, but we want to link this to something. So anyone that is familiar with CDS, you've got that regarding field. So what you can basically say, well, what is this linked to from an activity perspective? So we are going to say that this activity is going to be linked to the case. So the incident is the case record. And then we've got the case ID that we're pulling from the very first initial trigger step of when a case is closed. Then what we've got on the survey, when we get those responses, we've basically got a recipient. So who was the person that provided the responses? And we are using the contact record and the contact ID to link it to the right person. Then what we've got is a first name and a last name. Now, just before we actually go ahead and close the case, I just want to do a couple more things on that survey to show you, to me, this is where there's real power in this.
Okay.
So if I go back into my survey and we'll go back to create questions, this is a bit impersonal, isn't it? So basically, please let us know how we did on your case. All right, well, if I'm somebody that works at a company and I'm responsible for contacting support whenever there's something that goes wrong with the product we're using that company A created, I might have 10 cases that were just resolved. Well, how on earth do I know what feedback I'm giving? So if I click in here, first thing I might say is, I want to put their first name in, right? I want to make it a little bit more personal. So I come up here to personalize data, and I've got first name and last name. So I'm going to put that in. I'm going to say, please let us know how we did on your recent case we resolved.
Okay.
Then what I can do, so that's fine, that's great, that's easy. I didn't actually have to do much for that. But what I can do is come up here and I can personalize this specific survey, and I can say case number, and I can say case title. So that way, at least I can kind of give them a bit of a hint on what it is I want the feedback about.
Ooh.
So as soon as I've done that, I can come back over here, and if it's done it quickly enough, yay, so there they are. Okay, so I can say, instead of please let us know how we did on your recent case we resolved, I can then just put maybe a little bit case number hyphen case title, right? So I'm trying to help them a little bit so that they know what feedback they're about to give. Now, another thing that I could do is please rate the support rep who worked on your case. I could do something like pulling in the case owner. So I won't do that now because it would be a few more steps to change the flow, because we'd have to.
It's great though. Yeah, I love it.
To get the user and be able to pull in the owner and stuff like that. But I do have a video on if somebody wants to see that specifically. But see how quickly that was. So at the minute, obviously, the survey, that means nothing in terms of the survey. I could have put apples and pears. I could have put, sausage and mash, whatever. So case number and case title means nothing until I go back to my flow. Let's go ahead and refresh that. This is a test of how quickly stuff is updating. Let's see. Excellent. So now we can see I've got some fields that I can now say, well, case number is, and I want to just go ahead and do a quick search. And that's from the trigger step of when the case is closed. So we've got the case number, and then we'll do the case title.
Love it. And so that's something important to pay attention to right there is her step was named, right? So she could make sure that she was getting it from the trigger and not from a different step, because you want to make sure that you're getting those in context items.
Yeah, absolutely. And this one, because this is a template, obviously I'm not going to go and rename all of the steps, but you'll see in the other two that I've created where I've manually created them, then yes, that to me is the biggest thing. I need to know what each step is so I can pick the right value to put in.
Yep.
Okay, so any questions on that, or should I go ahead and close the case and see what happens?
No, let's go ahead and see it in action. I love
All right,
this.
so let's go ahead and I've got a case. Eagle Eyes will see that I have closed it before, but this is my test case, so that's fine.
Hey, that's
So
okay.
we'll go ahead and resolve it. And let's go ahead and issue fix, whatever it might be. And let's go ahead and resolve the case. All right, so we will go ahead and give that a moment. Let's just refresh the timeline. Well, actually, here's one I did earlier. So we can see here that there is a Forms Pro survey invite, and that's what will be generated when we have a flow that is linked to our Forms Pro survey.
Yep.
So if I let's go ahead and have a look at that. So that's basically an activity. So that's all it's done, and we can see there it's linked it regarding that case. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a look. Awesome. All right, so remember what we did is we had the first name in the email, but actually what you didn't see is in that actually no, I think this is I think what I've done is I've preempted my next flow, John.
Did
So
you?
we might have to come back to this.
Okay.
So it's going to be similar. So basically we can see the customization there. We've got that case number and we've got that case title. So the person that's receiving it, it's actually got some context to it. Now what's going to happen is when I go into my survey, we can see Megan, let us know how we're doing, and then we see the case number and we see the case title. So to me, the context is the most important thing in that. Is so someone actually getting that email, it gives them more of a I guess a purpose or a reason of why am I filling this out.
Absolutely, because if you, like you said, if you have 10 cases, I can go back in my email, look at that case number and say, oh, okay, this one, yeah, they handled this one in 10 hours. Like, I'm very happy with that. Or, oh, no, it was this one. It took them 3 weeks. Unacceptable.
Yeah, exactly. They know what they're giving the negatives for and the positives for. So that's fine. We will come back to that in a moment.
Cool.
So that's the sneak peek of the next one. So we'll jump into the flow 2. So looks very similar. It's been set up in a very similar way. We've basically got a tell us how we did with the case number, case title. So it's got that personalization in there. Yep. If I now go to the send survey option, we'll see actually this one has got 2 flows configured against it. Mm-hmm. Now in a real world scenario, you could potentially have that. I've got 2 because I've got 2 different examples that I've set up against this specific survey, but you might have something to where, let's say you have an incident that occurs and you've got a customer that's involved in that you want feedback from them, but maybe there's somebody else external or a third party vendor or even an internal person where you want feedback from them as well. How did things go on that incident from your perspective? So you're trying to gather feedback from multiple people. So to me, there's a very real world scenario that you could have where you want to have potentially 2 different flows configured because your steps are going to be completely different. Got it. So if I go into that flow, this one I would create in flow but I'll show you in a minute in terms of then, well, how would it actually get linked back? So just as a little teaser, this is not the one we're going to look at, but again, you can look on my YouTube channel. So this one is a survey that will send out an email to the contact based on the case being closed, but it will send it in the correct language based on a language field on the contacts record. And the email will be in a template that is set up in that specific language, and then also the survey will have it in the correct language as well. So so that flow is basically checking the contact, checking the language, and then saying, right, well, it's this language, so send them this email with this this text in the email in French or German or English or whatever the language might be.
I love it.
So all right, so let's have a look at this one. So this is where we talked about the invitation. So what we walked through, first of all, that first flow, that was send a survey, and that gives you no option to say, well, where is the email coming from? So this way we can actually say generate an invitation link and then put the link into the body of an email that you can then do whatever you want with that email. It can come from your support at company.com email address, whatever that might be. To me, that is very important from a recognition perspective, because I'm not going to likely open an email that comes from Microsoft in that sense, because I'm not expecting something like that. I would like, this has no meaning to me.
Totally.
So yeah, it's important. So we've got the same first step. So when a record is updated, so that's when the case is updated, and then again we're checking to see if it's been resolved.
Okay.
So on this one, I just did it for a contact. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get the contact that is basically using the link, and that's the customer ID that's on that case that was closed. So then what we're doing is we're basically using the action step that is a Forms Pro action step. And so I'll just quickly show you what I mean. If I just type in Forms, you'll see that there's Microsoft Forms and Microsoft Forms Pro. So this will be a Microsoft Forms Pro action, and that's the create an invitation one.
Okay.
So just so that people know exactly which one to pick.
Cool.
So all we do in this one is it's very similar to the previous one, where we're basically saying, okay, well, this invitation that we're creating, what should we use to pull in to comprise not only the email that we're sending out, what are we pulling that will show on the email, but what are we also going to show when we actually look at the survey? So that customization we saw where it says, hi, Megan, we closed a case for you, blah, blah, blah. That's why these things are important. Now here we can see we've got two empty ones, and that's because some kind of personalization was added to the survey, but not actually put into the flow just yet. So we can see there, we could add as much personalization as we wanted to. And if you really wanted to get clever and fancy, which who doesn't, then you could go get contact, and then from there, get the account that the contact works for. So then you could do things like, well, not only how happy are you, how happy is everyone else at ABC company? So you could pull in those other pieces of personalization from other records that are related to that contact.
So much more robust, so much more you can do than having exactly. with a CDS background versus an Excel backend.
Absolutely. So yeah. So now the last step is obviously to choose whatever email connector is most appropriate, and actually go ahead and then compose your email. So the two is going to be the email address field on the contact. The subject, again, what I've been able to do is use part of the case record, so the actual trigger of when the case was closed. So I'm saying case closed, case number, how did we do? Which on the first survey, all we get to do is pick the template, and that template cannot have any customization other than just saying first name or last name. So the fact that I can now capture their attention just from the subject in their inbox, again, they know what that email is all about.
Yep.
Makes sense. Yeah, exactly. So hi, first name, we recently closed the following case, and then we've got that case number, case title. Now here's
and so now this is the actual email that we saw, right?
It is, exactly, yes.
Okay.
So this is now where we've got that create an invitation step. We've got that invitation link. Now you could just put it in like that, but then it's just going to show up as the really, really long string. And the URL is going to look a bit pants. So what I've done is I've just used a little bit of HTML to put in an href hyperlink tag, so that instead, like we saw here, that complete feedback survey, it's got the link behind it. So then when we click on that, this is what the link would look like if we just used that link. And obviously that's a bit messy.
Terrible.
Yeah, doesn't look good, does it? So that's why I've customized it and made it hyperlink.
Now, one quick note: if you're going to use HTML in your email, make sure that you go and show your advanced options and turn on your HTML. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. In V2, you don't need to do that.
Good.
Sorry.
Okay.
I take it back.
So did I not need to use the break tags?
No, you do need to use the break tags. But the thing is in the old one, in the send an email action, you had to go to the advanced options and turn on is HTML. You had to turn it on to true, and then it could consume your HTML. In the V2,
so if I got it.
It consumes it by default.
So without that, in the old one, it would have come through and had greater than or less than P greater than rather than a paragraph tag or a break tag. Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. So yeah, so that again, to me, I think from an organization perspective, this is probably the way that I would be going, is doing the invitation link instead of the template that gets created. But again, you can start with the template, see how it was all put together, and then go ahead and just and modify it and kind of use that as your base starting point.
I love it.
Okay.
This is so cool. I'm going to start using Forms Pro now instead of Forms.
It's so powerful to me, like all the stuff you can do with it. So, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface, and like 20 videos in, and I'm like, oh, what can I do next? So, so the next one. So let's go back. And okay, so this one to me is an interesting one. So the survey that I've created is very, very basic. It's really just to kind of get something so I could embed it into a website. So I'm going to show you how you would embed it, and then how we can pass some kind of context back from the web page, back from the survey that's in the web page, and then use that to say, oh, well, this person was on this page, either putting a product name in so that I know from a sales perspective, if I'm the person that's responsible for working through leads, I can know where they were on the website when they filled out a form.
Well, and then what that means to everyone is you begin to understand what your best performing pages are. And so then you can build more pages like that one.
Yep. So also the benefit to me was thinking in terms of, I might have the exact same form that I want people to fill out. I want to know your name and your email address and maybe a phone number, but I didn't want to have 50 pages because I've got 50 forms because I've got 50 different product pages. This is where I could create one form, but embed it into 50 pages, but still know which page they were on. So let's have a look at how to do it. So I've got my survey, and I've got the send survey option, and I've got the embed option. All right, so I'm going to have the inline option for embedding. Now, what I've done is I've added a parameter that I'm basically saying I want to add some context so that I can pass back, I can embed something into some code and then pass that back through so that we can grab it and then we can somehow put it into CDS in some valuable way, so that it makes sense to us and it's helpful. So just to show you, these are really, really easy. You literally just click add custom parameter, and then I just basically type in product page, and then I've added it. Except that I've just added the same thing again. So there we can see I've just added a new one. So it's very, very easy to put those in.
Okay.
Then I click on generate code, and it gives me the code, and then I just basically copy it. And if you have access, you can do it, or you get your web admin to go ahead and do this for you. So I'm going to show.
Easy.
Yeah, I'm going to show you. Here's an example that I've embedded into my website. So the code that you get is all the way to here. Okay, I'll talk about the rest of the code in just a minute, but this is the code that is essentially from here when you copy this. So that's what you will get. So what you'll see there is it's got that product page parameter that we put into that survey, and we've basically, that we've just added, and so that is what's important. So that's what you paste in. The next thing is just something to make it look a bit prettier. So the I don't know if someone doesn't really know about websites, this probably part won't make sense, but the way in which you design a website is you use something called divs, which in a simple way is dividers of sections or blocks on a site. So that is to style it so that it shows all of the survey rather than cutting it off in a little iframe and make someone having to scroll through. So that's more just a prettiness thing. And then this is basically script that we need that is going to take the product page that we added here and say, right, well, when I send this back through, what product? So this might be Pepsi, or it might be sandwiches, or it might be whatever. So it doesn't really matter. That's basically up to you as to what is it that page is about. You know, it could be about service or a product. So I'm just saying I had product D in there, C, so I'll put product D this time. So I'm putting that information in there because when somebody fills out the form on this specific page, or the page I'm about to show you, then when they fill it out, the product D will be passed through along with the name, the first name, last name, and the email address.
Got it.
And then the last thing we do is we just close off that div so that it doesn't break the page.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and we will take a look. Just refresh it. So it's going to embed it into an iframe. So it is quite a large form. I didn't play around with it too much in terms of can I make it look a little bit smaller, but again, for the for the purpose of this, it's fine. All right, so I've got my information there. So let's just go ahead and fill it out. And there we go. Thanks for
Mary giving fake emails.
I know. She's doing it everywhere. She's a loser. All right. So if I now go back to the send survey area, this is, oh, no, hang on. This one, my flow is a little bit different. There we go. Let's go ahead and edit this one. So this one is because I'm not trying to trigger anything based off I'm doing it a little bit differently because I've embedded it, so it's not necessarily linked directly to the survey. So it's a little bit different. So you can set up a flow completely sort of independently. This one, I'm not trying to get somebody to fill out the survey as part of my flow. We're now saying someone's filled out the survey. So what we've got in CDS is an entity called a survey response or Forms Pro survey response. So now what we're doing is we're triggering and saying when a new survey response is created in your environment.
Yep. What you're essentially doing here is creating the trigger and action that exists right now for the other forms.
Correct. Yes.
Yep.
What we are now doing though is we are using the classic or the first forms connector. We're using the standard one, if you will, and we still need to use that to actually get the response details back through.
Interesting.
So we know that the response has come into CDS because it's created a new record. Now what we need to do is based on that that activity is essentially what that is. We need to take the ID of that and basically transform it so that it understands. Is it like, so it's an integer? Is that correct?
Yeah.
This is where I'm like, oh, okay, I know what I should put, but in terms of explaining, I'm a bit crap.
Yeah, you're trying to turn it into text that it can understand.
So that is the ID we need to switch.
Yeah.
Yep. So we have to do that step because otherwise, if you don't and you just pull in the this field, and that trying to pull it in that value without using the expression, it just won't work. You'll just get errors. So we have to do that first of all. All right, so now what we are going to do, and again, this is one of these ones where I think with Flow, there's so much you can do without being a developer, which to me is one of the most amazing things about it. So I'm not a developer by any means. I know how to say JSON. That's it. So to be able to do something like this is really, really cool. So this step right here, see how we've got this context data. This is a field or within CDS on the survey response entity.
Okay.
And if you add that field into a view and then export it, you can actually get this this information schema that you need to be able to move on to the next step. So I didn't have to write anything. I didn't have to code anything. I basically was able to get this from by creating a survey and then going to the survey response, exporting it into Excel, and then being able to get this. And then literally pasting it in here.
I like this. Yeah. That is scrappy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to work with what you got, right?
I love it.
All right. So the reason for that is what will contain, and you can see right there, my product page. Yep. So if I pull that, that's basically going to take whatever I put in that product page parameter in my code right here. So whatever I put here, that is what's going to be pulled through.
Yep.
All right. So next, what I'm going to do is I want to see, because I don't want 10 Mary Smiths as a lead. I don't want that. I want to have Mary Smith as a lead. But then if she's actually, on a bit of a rampage on my website and she's like, right, I'm interested in product A and product B and product G and product H. I want it all combined so that I can see all that information, right? So what I'm going to do now is we've got a step that we are listing leads. So we're basically looking for leads in my environment, and we're using a filter query, so an OData filter query. And we're doing that on the email address. And we're basically saying the email address equals the email that was put into the field on the survey.
Okay.
Okay, so we're checking that. Then what we're doing, and this, I don't know if you know Bruce Sertoli, who lives in Australia. He has
Not familiar.
So he doesn't do blogs. He's not like every week. But when he does a blog, like, it's really, really good. And it's like, nice. Right, his blog's come out, I'm going to read it. And nice. There's been a couple of times where I have wondered how to do something as part of a bigger sort of blog idea that I've had. I'm like, oh God, I'm stuck on this step. And I think 2 or 3 times now, his blog has come to my rescue to where I'm like, oh, thank God that he's written it. So he's an awesome guy, really, really cool. Awesome. So Bruce was the one that I found had done this. So again, I'm pretty crap at explaining these sorts of things, but I'm basically, let's see if I can explain it right, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong, John. But what we're doing is we're basically saying, okay, does this email address exist on any record? If it did, then it would basically bring back a value, and if there is a value, then that would be yes, so we'd go down that path. If there isn't, it would be null, so we would go down another path.
Yeah, it's basically, I think from what I can tell here, it's checking, have we talked to this person already about this?
Well, based on the email address, are they in the system? Is there a match against that email address?
Got it.
That
okay.
match would be done based on there's a value, there's a record that exists with that, so therefore there's a value. If there's no value that comes back and it's null, and if Bruce, if you are watching this, then, and I sound like an idiot, then please correct me.
That's a pretty nice expression. It's a pretty good expression.
Yeah,
there.
It's really cool. So he did it. So full credit to him. I did not.
Awesome.
I just repurposed. But to me, that's also the massive benefits of the community. So based on that, I've got 2 paths. If no, we're basically saying the email address is not already in the system. So therefore, I want to create a new lead. So I'm going to create a new lead. And what I'm going to do, and this is where it's important, the step up here where we got the survey response details, is I want to use the response in the form that they filled out and create a new lead. So that last name field that was on the survey, we basically have pulled that from, let me not scroll. So there we go. So we've got our last name field, and that's from the survey response details, but you can tell because it's got the little forms icon. Then here's where I'm using the JSON step, and I'm basically putting the topic on the lead. So anyone that's not familiar with leads, topic is a required field, and that's basically the subject. What are they interested in? Where did you meet them? That sort of thing. So for this, we're saying interested in, and we're using the product that we've embedded into our web page that we're able to pull and do the JSON step and actually get that information.
Awesome.
Yep, and then we're basically taking the email address and the first name, and that's all we have on that survey. So that's obviously all we can do. But obviously you can see you could have a survey with all kinds of stuff on and then just populate the various fields. Now, here's the important second part to this, is we've created the lead, but at the minute that lead has got nothing to do with the survey response. We've just created a lead with things from that. So we don't want to leave that survey response just hanging around just on its own in the database. Let's actually link it to that person. So we are doing the next step, and that is to update a record, and we're updating the survey response record, and the response identifier is the activity ID, because as I said before, the survey response is an activity. And the subject of that could be whatever you want, but this, to me, I still want to have a subject on my survey responses, because by default they come through with no subject. So I want to give it a bit of context. So this is the way that I do it. So I'm going to do requests for details and also use that product page. Then what I'm going to do is the respondent is actually a text field that you have the first name, last name, and email. If you had done the first two flows that we walked through, where we sent a survey and created it that way on case closure, and then also created the invite, that information we would have passed through originally from the flow. We now have to do it after the fact, so we're going to put that information in. Regarding is the lead that we just created in the step above. So our create new lead step, we are basically linking it against that specific record. So all of that is if that lead was not already in the system. So this side, they're already in there. So we're going to do the exact same thing that we did on this linker survey, but we're linking it to the lead that already exists.
Nice. Man.
So to make, yeah, it's a nice little way to make sure that I'm not ending up with multiple leads, duplicate leads, and also I'm cleaning things up a little bit by saying, right, well, here's the response, here's the lead I'm creating, let's put them all together with a nice little bow.
This just makes me feel like all of the forms, office forms, whatever you want to call them, with a SharePoint backend and all that, like child's play. This is real power. Yeah. And I think I'm now going to redo all the forms on mine and my fiance's website to use this instead of regular forms.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, because you can see like so much more. I mean, I've got a blog coming out next week, which is or whatever this is going out, I'm not sure, but there will be a blog that's coming out very soon with a video, and that's about sentiment analysis. So we talked about net promoter score briefly. You know, I touched on there was a net promoter score question. There's also sentiment analysis that is built in. So if somebody says, okay, well, overall, I'm happy with the organization, I'll give you a 9. But the question is, how did the support rep do? And they say, the guy is a jerk. He was so rude. That John's awful. Okay, that's really bad sentiment, right? So I can use the sentiment as a trigger to send an email to somebody to say, you know, the support manager that says, you probably want to follow up with this customer, because even though they've given a 10, the overall sentiment of their feedback is negative. So things like that to really sort of, you know, give your organization the full picture just by someone filling out a form.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. This is so good. I feel like I just drank from a fire hose for a while. Like I thought I knew forms, but this is such a higher level experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Good. I'm glad you liked it. Good.
Yes, this was thank you so much for coming and sharing this with us. This is great.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So
It's fun.
now,
Fun.
do you have a slide to put up with all your information so that people can come and find you? There it is. That's what I was looking for. Okay.
So I've
So
tried to make it a little bit easier as well. The top link will take you to all of the videos and blog posts just about Forms Pro. So if you wanted to just go and didn't want to have to search anything, you can use that.
ooh. So you know what? I got a tip for you about that after when we go off air. So,
Okay,
anyways, you guys go now. Follow Megan on Twitter. Go subscribe to her YouTube channel. Those are the two most important. Okay, the LinkedIn, the email, the website, less important. First thing, go subscribe to her YouTube. Go follow her on Twitter. She is over 20 videos now, you said, in Forms Pro.
Yeah.
Over 20 videos now teaching you from front to back this entire technology, and not to mention entertaining teaching style, very, very thorough, awesome. So you guys, you know what to do. Not only today, I'm gonna lead you out a little bit differently today. Typically, I say you know what to do. Go like and subscribe. But today I'm gonna say you know what to do. Go like and subscribe to me and to Megan. Much love from both of us.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys all in the next video.
Awesome. Thank you.